I think the biggest thing that I've done over the years is I have conversations with myself before big games on how I'm going to handle those negative situations. You have that internal voice in your head that is saying, okay, when this call goes against us, not only is your team going to be watching you, but everybody in the stands is going to be watching you, the whole home crowd if it's a big game. To me, the thing that we've had the most success with is if you want to play through mistakes, playing through mistakes is also not only your mistakes, but also the mistakes of the officials.
Welcome to the Jamodi Podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is Jamodi, just a matter of doing it.
Today we are joined by the head girls basketball coach at Idalou High School, Tyler Helms. Coach Helms has a unique experience, having been previously the boys coach at Idalou from 2009 to 2014. In that time, he led the Wildcats to 4 state tournaments from 2010 to 2013, winning the state championship in 2011. He was named TABC Coach of the Year in 2011. In 2014, Coach Helms moved over to the girls' side at Idalou, leading his teams to 8 district championships, 7 regional tournament appearances, and a state semifinals finish in 2022. In 2019, he was named TABC Dean Weiss Outstanding Coach of the Year. Coach Helms is currently serving as president of TABC, Texas Association of Basketball Coaches. Before we hear from Coach, take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media at Jamodi Podcast.
How's it going, Coach?
Coach, what's going on, man?
Oh, just another day.
Yeah, living the dream there.
Absolutely. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm good. Just got done with second period athletics, which is my favorite part of the day. Putting in some good flow action today. Tell me about how are things going with you?
Yeah, we're in the preseason mode right now as well, trying to get our middle schools going. Got them a couple days a week this time of year. We share kids at the size of school that I'm at. And then just basketball season with the high school, trying to implement some preseason things. So it's going good.
Well, nice. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on here and talking hoops with me, and also want to congratulate you on becoming TABC president. Like that's a big honor. I know you care about TABC like I do. So really appreciate your time, man.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited to be able to represent the voice of Texas basketball. I feel like Coach Villegas last year got, kept momentum going from the previous presidents, and hopefully we're trying to progress and continue to move the game forward. That's the goal of all of us. Hopefully I can play a small part in that.
No doubt. How long have you been involved, though, with TABC? Because I feel like I've seen your face and your name around there for years now.
Yes, sir. I was fortunate to get on the board. So I think this is my 5th or 6th year being around, and kind of having an idea of how it works, and getting to work clinic and getting to meet everybody that's on the board. And they put me up, nominated me for second vice president, and I was able to get that nomination. And really, it's just been good to see behind the scenes. I think a lot of times us as coaches, we are so focused on our team and focused on our program that, the clinic is an awesome time to go and see other coaches talk and see how other coaches do things. But as far as like behind the scenes and how all that stuff works, I know, speaking for myself, I was very uneducated about that process before I was able to get on the board. And then serving in the role of second and first vice president, now president. I've just seen behind the scenes and seen that, change takes time, and there's a lot of hoops to jump through when you're trying to get, try to progress the game or get change in the game. And so I've enjoyed learning about that process, and just look forward to continuing to be a little small piece of that process as we try to progress it forward.
Yeah, I think it's so important for as high school coaches. Doesn't matter if you're at a private school like I am or a public school, for us to be involved with TABC, to have all of our staff and assistants to continue to grow that number, so that there's even more of a unified voice across Texas high school basketball. And I don't think people realize, but all the things that TABC does. They know about the clinic and the summer camp, but I mean, the rankings are huge. The awards that they give out for coaches and players, there's a lot. And I think there's a lot of states that don't have a body, a basketball body like we have here in Texas.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you're referencing is a lot of the stuff that probably I didn't realize before I got on the board and before I got involved. The other thing that I'm excited about is we're trying to build relationships with the other organizations, with TGCA and with THSCA, and ultimately, as we try to progress the game moving forward, continue to build that relationship with UIL. And there's a couple big topic issues out there right now. The main one we've been talking about lately is shot clock, and then also possibly split divisions. And just seeing behind the curtain and looking at some of those things and how the process in which those things could possibly be changed. That's been very educational for me. And using the organization to try to progress the game in those areas has been an interesting but also a daunting task.
Obviously, there are guys like Tommy Brackle out there that when you say shot clock, he's immediately leaning in and he's excited and ready. But I'm a fan of it too. And getting to do this now for 2.5 years, one of my speed round questions is in high school basketball, do you want a shot clock or no shot clock? And I would say it's about 90% shot clock. The 10% they have good reasons. Like I don't think that they're just saying no to be just to do that. Since you've kind of been behind the scenes, there at times I think as high school coach, we might just think like, just do it. Like, why can't we just do it? What's the big deal? What's holding it back? But I know there's a lot more to it than that. What are some of those hurdles that you see from keeping us from? I think there's 26 states right now in the country that do use one. What's holding us back?
One of the big things that I've been able to see as I've served in the role that I've been serving in the past few years is just the process in which actual rules get changed. In reference specifically to the shot clock, there's the naysayers are going to talk about the implementation of it in reference to the upfront costs. Obviously, you have to have somebody that knows what they're doing running it. But the process in which any rule gets changed is a lot of times a 3 to 5 year process, depending on who you talk to. And the first thing is that we're in the process right now of trying to figure out, and I feel like we've got a good plan in place as an organization as far as TABC goes, getting an accurate poll. Trying to get a poll not only of the coaches that are in favor of it, but we need something specific in reference to figuring out how to aggregate the data of classification and gender. So male and female coaches, as far as who they're coaching, and then also each classification. Because what you're going to see, what I've seen when I've had conversations with people throughout the state, is their opinion differs on what classification that they're coaching, and then also whether they're coaching, boys or girls. And so aggregating that data, figuring out a way to get that split up, that's something that we're trying to work on right now. I know that there's been some polls out there. We feel like we have a plan in place to try to get better, accurate poll data, and hopefully we can get that. And then whatever the poll data says, but at least we can get that information and then hopefully get it to the right people that eventually are the ones that make the rule changes, which is the legislative council, ultimately the superintendents.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I guess I will. What are your thoughts on it? And because you brought up a lot of good points about maybe it is about levels of play and maybe gender does come into it. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think one of the things, the list of questions that you sent to me that maybe we were talking about today, this has kind of organically come up in this process as far as this interview goes. I think the game is changing in reference to kids are so much better with the ball now than they've ever been. The dribble drive craze of 15, 20 years ago really caught fire with the boys. And then I think you've seen that creep into the girls' game, specifically last, I would say, 5 to 7 years. Everybody has a private trainer. Everybody goes to individual sessions, and the end result of that is kids are way better with the ball than they've ever been before. I think the end result of that is actually something we're thinking about right now as a program. Do we need to play more zone to combat the fact that kids are better with the ball in space than they've ever been? And so there's a lot of unintended consequences to the game being spread out and kids being better with the ball. And now that kind of goes hand in hand with the shot clock. I feel like when I first started coaching girls 10 years ago, we really never had somebody that you could throw the ball to at the end of the shot clock and you could just spread the floor and they could make a play. Or maybe you could go send a ball screen at them and that you'd be able to get a shot at the end of that clock. Whereas I feel like not only us, but also the best teams that we're playing against now, they normally have that one or two kids that you can get it to at the end of a shot clock if that's what we had. And so, I think as the game moves forward, I think that that's something that it is a conversation that is more relevant now than maybe if it was 10 years ago, specifically on the girls' side. So I think you see the evolution from, the dribble drive craze 15, 20 years ago with the boys, and now that's kind of worked into the girls' game, specifically at our level. So these are all interesting topics, and I think it leads right into the shot clock of what we're talking about.
I think, too, we have to look and see what overseas the model is and how is that developing their players on both sides, boys and girls. And I think I'm correct in this, but both genders from a pretty young age play with a 24-second shot clock over there. I'm not sure how young they go over, or go down. But to me, there will be, obviously at every level, there will be some struggle early on, struggle for players to figure out how to play faster, in a given possession, harder struggle for coaches to figure out what plays they can keep, ones they have to speed up or take pieces out. But ultimately, if we're about development, it seems to me that players having to move the ball quicker and make those 5-second or 0.5-second decisions or reads ultimately leads to better players and development. But I don't know. I think that's maybe something we got to look at and explore. Why are we waiting or holding back when it seems like others are doing it?
Absolutely. And I think that's where us as an organization, we're going to try to figure out how to get that accurate data so we can take that to the rule changers. And, in reference, you kind of asked me what my personal thoughts were. We've played every single way that you can play. We've played fast, we've played slow, we've played high-low, we've played dribble drive, depending on your personnel, because you don't get to recruit your kids at this level, obviously. But I will say that as far as moving the game forward, there's going to be one or two games each year for us where we're just completely overmatched, and it might cross my mind that hey, let's hold it, let's shorten the game, But are those one or two games, does that outweigh the rest of the time where your kids have to figure out how to be better with the ball and make quicker decisions? And I do feel like that's where the game's going, and that's where we're progressing to. And so that, to me, as a specific coach of a program, that's kind of where I'm at on it. We might win one or two games if we got very deliberate with it and we shorten a game. But ultimately, we're all trying to grow the game. And so, moving forward, I think I would like to coach with a shot clock if we were able to get it passed through. And we don't necessarily have college kids at my level year in, year out.
Yeah.
We've had a few since I've been coaching girls, but getting them ready for what they're going to deal with at the next level would be a good unintended consequence as well.
I definitely think that it will change up late game situations where, when in the past you've been down 8-10 with 2 minutes left, and you just really have to scramble, or golly, it's really hard to come back from that at times. Now, offensively, you have to continue to execute, because if you don't, and defensively, you got to speed the game up, but at least that, because I think we have a pretty decent delay game. We try to run and gun for the first 3.5 quarters all the way down to 2 or 3 minutes left. It's the only time where if it's 8 points or less, we'll pull that thing out and we'll start to delay. And And it's difficult for teams if we can all handle it and all shoot free throws and we're good passers. But with that will change up. That'll be the biggest part. I think that changes up for a lot of coaches is you're up 6 with a minute and a half left. You got to still play.
Absolutely. Everything that you're talking about as far as strategy goes, and then just learning something new as a coach. I mean, a lot of us that have been coaching at the high school level, it's not something that we've necessarily had to deal with. And I think it would be a fun new strategy to the game, if it was ever implemented.
Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Shoot 360. The future of basketball has arrived in Dallas-Fort Worth. Shoot 360 combines the latest sports technology with the fundamentals of basketball skill development. The result is a one-of-a-kind video game-like basketball program designed to improve your shooting, dribbling, and passing. Visit shoot360dfw.com to learn more and register for your free 1-hour workout evaluation. Shoot 360, the future of basketball is here. I'd love to know a little bit about your philosophy on scouting reports and also in-game adjustments, because I think some coaches go really deep into the scouting report. Others, it's just 3 things. They keep it very simple. And then on the in-game adjustments, some guys are just, hey, process. We're going to keep trying to do what we're doing just at a higher level with more effort, execute better, or we're going to make dramatic changes. Where do you line up? I think those are almost 2 questions, right? Where do you line up there?
The game has moved, especially at the higher levels. Analytics is such a big part of what everybody's doing now. And it's kind of the craze. I think we land somewhere in the middle. We do look at analytics, with all the stuff out there now with Huddle Assist and, whatever program, each program decides to use as far as scouting goes. We have access to all of that information and we definitely utilize it. But I think the art of having a feel for what you're looking at when you're watching film or you're watching an opponent live is also a big piece for us still. I can look at a stat line that I look at as far as analytics go, and they can tell me one thing. I just always want to make sure that when I'm watching film or I'm watching another team live when we're scouting them, that I feel like what my eyes are telling me also matches what the analytics say. Just an example I'll throw out there is, you can watch a team play that you're scouting, and a kid's 1 of 8 from the 3-point line, but they look very comfortable every time they're catching that sucker and firing it. And so, that's one of the things that we always try to gauge is, the analytics are telling us 1 for 8. But is that the type of kid that eventually is going to go 7 for 8?
Right.
And so I think there's still some art there as far as when you're watching film or you're watching another team live, what do your eyes tell you? And then the same thing for us when I'm scouting us, when we're self-scouting. There's nobody that knows your team better than you do as a coach. And so if your best player or a few of your best players are in a slump the last 5 or 6 games, the analytics are going to tell you that those are low percentage shots for them. But if you've had the kid in your program for several years and eventually they're going to crawl out of it, that's one of those things that, to me as a coach, you definitely still have to have a feel for as well. So individually, that's kind of the way I see analytics, and then also how we would do a scouting report on somebody else. And then the second part of that, team wise, we always try to figure out, especially at our level, but I feel like you see this all the way up, even into the collegiate and pro level, figure out who you don't have to guard. If there's somebody out there or a couple people out there that you don't have to guard, it really shrinks the floor for you defensively, no matter if you're playing man or zone, or maybe if you choose to junk them if they have 1 or 2 that you don't have to guard. And so do the analytics match up to what your eyes are telling you in reference to that kind of stuff? And that's one thing that we've had a lot of luck with over the years is figuring out 1 or 2 kids from the other team that we feel like aren't as big of threats and then shrinking the floor and giving more attention to the better players. And then the flip side of that is trying to create space for your best players. Are your best players post players? Are your best players, kids that you can throw the ball to in space and they can create their own stuff or get down in the lane and draw fouls or drop it off and kick it out for shots? And so I think all that goes into scouting and all that goes into the analytics of Can you get the ball to the paint? I mean, can you get the ball to the third side of the floor? I mean, the analytics point to if you can do those two things at a high level, you're going to have a higher points per possession. And so those are all things that we consistently weigh in reference to analytics.
And I love that nugget about finding out who you don't have to guard. And it made me think of Paul Mills. When he was at Oral Roberts, we got to have one of these talks, and he literally said that even at their level, he said there's usually one guy on each team that you don't really have to worry about. And that kind of blew my mind because I thought, yeah, okay, at the 5A TAPS level, yeah, there's some teams where there's 1, 2, maybe 3. I've had teams where we've had 1 or 2 guys that, man, they're really trying to stop them from shooting. I don't think they need to, but hopefully the idea of shooting a ton of threes or people watch us play, it's a little smoke and mirrors. The fact that all of them look like they can shoot like that 1 for 8 guy. If we look like we can and we're confident, then hopefully they believe that all of our guys do it the same, even though we know they don't. But that is interesting. How many times do we guard all 5 players, whether it's pressure man, but we're giving them all the same amount of attention, where obviously we don't want to give up open jump shots. But when they don't have the ball, man, if we can shrink the floor, like you said, make that box more cluttered, that's a great nugget.
Yeah, and I think you see it even at the pro level. I mean, they're playing drop coverage on the ball screens when you turn on the NBA finals or the conference finals, and that's essentially what they're doing is they're trying to shrink the floor so they have less space to cover. You referenced the in-game adjustments. One of the things that I've never had a ton of luck with as a head coach is drawing something up, just scrapping it, during the middle of the game, scrapping everything we're doing and then going to something completely different. I think every adjustment that we've ever had success with is something that we've already planned before the game, and maybe even having an adjustment to that adjustment. But I've never had a bunch of luck with going in at halftime and just saying, okay, we're going to completely do something off the wall and something we haven't practiced. And
yeah.
So that, as far as adjustments go, I'm sure there's coaches out there that have done that and it's worked. Just throwing something at the wall at halftime or during the middle of the game. But we always try to pre-plan every type of adjustment that we thought we think might be something that we have to do during the game. And so that's kind of where we've always been on in-game adjustments. And it's worked better for us. The small amount of times that I've tried to do something outside the box that we haven't practiced, I just haven't had a whole lot of luck with that.
Coach, you're right on the money. I mean, if late in the game you bring them in and you're drawing up something brand new they've never done before, that's a scary position to be in. Like if that's what we're resulting to right at that point. But I think a lot about the Denver head coach, and I always blank on his name, the Nuggets head coach. But
is it Malone?
Sure. Yeah, I just can't think about it. But there's a video of him where he's asked about in-game adjustments and why he didn't make a change. And he said, why would I have to make a change when the effort wasn't what it needed to be and the execution for what we were trying to do wasn't what it needed to be? He's like, if those two things are missing, there's not an adjustment. Play harder, try to do it right.
Absolutely.
Once but then I think, because I think sometimes we just make adjustments like things are going pretty well, or it doesn't, what we're doing doesn't seem to be working. We make an adjustment, we go to something else, but really what we needed to do was remind our players, however you want to remind them, that there's another level of effort we can get to. And we're not going to make a change until we start executing this correctly. I think that's maybe a distinction. And then once those two things are lining up, okay, maybe it's time we were in man, we're doing it right the way we talked about. We're going to jump into a zone. They're having some success, even though our effort and execution is great. But I don't know. I've felt myself at times wondering, should I make a change right now? It's not working. Well, evaluate, is the effort right? Is the execution right?
Absolutely. And then I think you fall back on, at what point is it just this is what we're going to do, and you guys are either going to win or lose doing this, but this is the hill that we're willing to die on. And I think that, that we've gotten a lot of mileage out of that attitude as well. This is who we are. And, like you just said, we got to play harder and we got to execute better. It's nice to always have an adjustment, but at what point do you make that adjustment? I think it differs for each team and differs, based on who you're playing. But a lot of times, if you have to go to the adjustment, you're in trouble anyways.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Rarely are you going to the adjustment because you're up 20 and everything's going great. That's a good point. So you talked a little bit about analytics and how they do affect your coaching style. Are there any in particular that, like, these are our big four, these are the ones that we really pay attention to in practice and after games?
I think that based on analytics, we always like to, our biggest philosophy defensively is we're a man foundation team. We only allow our middle school teams to run man, and our sub varsities only run man. And then once they get to varsity, if we need to mix in some junk that particular year or some zone that particular year, then we've done that as well. But as far as analytics go, we're
Coach, are you saying that zone is junk? Are you saying that? Did you say that?
No, when I'm saying junk, I'm talking about, are we going to not guard somebody, or true triangle and two, true diamond and one?
There's a lot of coaches out there that'll say, like, yeah, we're going to throw some junk, maybe a zone at them, and it's like, okay, I get it. Yeah. You're a man guy. No.
No, we are man. Yeah. We are a man program. But like this year, for instance, we're thinking about playing 50% zone, and so it's not when we reference junk, it's always
I know.
True junk. So
yeah.
But yeah, I like the running joke. It's kind of like what's true motion on offense.
That's right.
So back to what you were talking about, we normally look at personnel matchups as far as analytics go. Who are our best defenders? What do we need to do in order to stop the other team, or put our best on their best, or do we want to use our second or third best defender to guard their best player? And so we start there because our philosophy defensively has always been, let's try to take the best thing or two that they do away, or at least slow them down, and then we start working our way down the list from there. And that's not revolutionary. I know that everybody does that. Then we try to weigh what their strengths and weaknesses are. Are they a team that likes to shoot the three, or are they a team that likes to drive it to get it to the paint? Or are they a team that tries to throw the ball inside, or their best players post players? And so breaking down the analytics of where they're getting their shots from is a big piece of what we do as far as scouting goes and using analytics. And then, keeping the other team out of transition if that's something that they're good at. And a lot of that also has to do with what type of personnel we have defensively. Are we able to pick somebody up full court to slow them down? Or do we want to pick them up full court to try to speed them up if they're trying to play slow? And so there's so many different ways and things that you can use numbers wise that go into making those decisions. But those are some of the big things that we look at. And a lot of it always has to do with how are we built as a team. Last year, for instance, we ended up about halfway through the year, we decided, our rotation was kind of jumbled and we were trying to figure out where to play kids. And we ended up deciding kind of having two teams in one, where we had a team, they came off the bench, that pressed and they played dribble drive. And then the team that we started, we were more of a sagging man and, a high-low ball screen team. And
straight 5 in, 5 out with that group? Or did you have some crossovers?
We had one crossover, but we brought 4 off the bench that did that and then used one of the starters to do it. It's the second time we've done that in my career.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, we did it with the boys 10 or 11 years ago. We decided last year with the girls that's how we were going to maximize our team. And that's always our goal. Let's get as good as we can get with the personnel that we have. And that's what we ended up deciding to do last year.
One thing interesting you said was about like man-to-man principles all the way through junior high. Junior high can only play man. I thought that way for a long time. Talking with Leslie Broadhurst, and how he was man-to-man for like years and years, and then learned the like amoeba zone and started going to that. And then, but he would have his junior high. I guess I'm looking for a little advice because our base now is a 3-2 pressure zone. And my thought was, if that is what I believe we're going to be good at for a long time. And I do really agree with your first point of the whole deal with, because everybody is attacking off the bounce, there is less cutting and screening, and it's more creating and getting in gaps. Let's take them out of what they work on 95% of practice by being in a zone. So I've seen it for 3.5 years now that's the truth. But my thought is I need to have our junior high running our zone so that they are comfortable coming up in it. But what are your thoughts on, should I keep them in man? Because I do believe man-to-man, like dribble drive is the offense behind every offense. Now, man-to-man is the defense behind every defense. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so one of the biggest reasons that we only play man with our sub-varsities and our junior highs is offensive development also. So every day, our whole practice is built around, you can play 3-on-3, you can play 4-on-4, and trying to develop some offensive firepower outside of our best 1 or 2 players. And so that's one of the biggest reasons that we only play man exclusively. But I can't argue with the fact of we've definitely tinkered with the idea of allowing our junior high to play some zone, allowing our sub-varsities to play some zone for the reasons that you just mentioned. The game's moving away from pass and cut, pass and screen, those type of things, to more of a spread it out and play. And so that's something we're going to continuously look at as we move forward. But one of the things that you just said a while ago, I think also is another big reason that we play man, and that's to make sure that if you can play good man defense, we feel like we can teach you to play a good zone defense with the same principles. The zone that we're putting on this year with our older kids, it's been way easier to teach because they already understand if you're on, if you're away from the ball, if you're on the help side, you got to be ready to rotate, whether it be stop the dribble or help the helper or whatever it is. They're so well versed in the man-to-man stuff that it's been way easier to teach the zone.
That's a good point. And I feel like we need to be using the same terminology, whether it is man or zone, because the idea that, we're going to sit in a zone now, forget everything you've just done with man-to-man. You're still moving on the fly of the ball. You still have to be on their shoulder to take away what we would call 7, an open jump shot. You still have to be in gaps, 2 pass away. You still have to be on the wall in the paint. But there is this almost a disconnect of, like, in man-to-man, we grind, and then in a zone, we stand and watch. I think if you can teach a zone like you teach man-to-man, man, that thing's going to be dynamic. And on the fly of the ball, you're going to be 5 people. You're going to see 5 people moving like a flock of birds do.
Yeah, that's a great point. If you can get them to intermingle and to where the terminology is the same and you're kind of teaching the basic principles the same, I think it makes it easier to bounce back and forth. There's so many different ways to skin a cat. What's funny is we're actually thinking about this year doing it almost opposite of kind of what you just said, where our man principles are we're always going to put good ball pressure, but we're more of a, not necessarily a pressure. We're not really getting in the lanes, in the passing lanes. So we're going to play it more of a, I wouldn't say a safe, but just more of a, hey, let's keep the ball out of the paint. Let's try to force perimeter shots. Whereas our zone, we're trying to teach them to be ultra aggressive in it and get right up underneath their chin. And if you get beat off the bounce, no big deal, because we have the next person ready to jump the ball. And so, it's just funny when you talk to different coaches, everybody has different things and different viewpoints on how they view different defenses.
But I love the idea behind that, especially the pressure in a zone, because the moment that a team goes into their zone offense, they typically stand. They're less aggressive. So, it makes sense. Instead of sitting back and allowing them to stand and be less aggressive, let's create conflict between them and maybe even their coach or how they feel. Because when they're in that high-low offense, but you're creeping up in them and forcing them to play, and the spacing isn't the same, and they know in a zone, I'm really just supposed to be moving it instead of trying to attack the paint. I like when whatever we're doing creates conflict in the opponent's heart.
Absolutely. And it makes me question, we've been 90% man over the years. Every time we play against zone, I feel like the coach, like you're just saying, and I'm like, why don't we run more zone? Because we hate playing against
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
But it,
we our players just turn their brains off, and we're always dynamic on the catch, and we're shooting open threes like against a zone like a 2-3. Man, we should shoot it even faster. But like, there's been times where we're moving that ball around, and I just yell out like I would have shot it 3 times by now, But there's something about like, okay, this is a zone. Now I have to be smart in play. I have to think like, no. Play instinctively like you've been playing, but you're right on the money. There's a change.
Yeah, and it looks different. I think especially with the whole dribble drive deal, if they get you into 4 out, 1 in, and they got that kid in the dunker spot that is good at cleaning up offensive rebounds, and you're in man, and they just keep attacking you. If you jump into zone, they may still attack you with dribble drive principles, but it doesn't exactly look the same as what they practice. The rotation is a little bit different. The straight line drives aren't there.
Yep.
The bunker spot guy has to relocate to a little bit different spot. So it just kind of gives them a change. That's really why we're thinking about going to more zone.
Glad you're thinking that way, Coach, because it makes me feel better. I went to it 3.5 years ago. I was a straight man-to-man guy. In fact, if you played a zone, I thought you were weak. And that was and we're going back and forth from full court man to pack line. When we went pack line, we saw that our scores did this. They just nosedive down, and we want to play more up tempo offense and pack line defense. That's a hard mix for high school players. And I was at church and I saw one of the Birdville assistant coaches, and we were talking, asked him how his year went. And he said, "Oh, we're about 7-1 right now. This zone we're running, it's really good." And I thought, "Oh, okay." But I asked him, I said, what is it? He's like, "Well, it's this kind of 3-2 matchup. And this guy named Randall Durant, was running it years and years ago at Keller High School." And I was like, "Okay, well, you send it to me." And he sent it, and loved what I saw, loved the position it put players in and how it changed offensively, kind of their mindset. And we put it in a day. And I think we've run 1/4 of man this last year. We did it for 1/4 in the last 3.5 years, and just have felt pretty comfortable with it. But there's always that fear in my head of like, are they still learning how to play defense? Which what I believe is man-to-man principles. But then going back to your point and what we've discussed, I think it doesn't really matter what you're playing as long as you're using that terminology that gets them moving quick, making quick decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing that to me, all of us have to weigh as far as program development. Do you feel like it's going to impede what you have moving forward? And if the answer to that is no, or if the answer to that is we're just going to be a zone team and this is how we're playing, I think that's good. To me, that's what I love about not only the game of basketball, but all sports is there's so many different philosophies. And you as the head coach, you get to choose what that is for your program and what that is for your varsity. And then try to go make it happen on game night. And so that to me is all the fun in learning how to coach and learning how to make adjustments from there.
That's also the big change from going to that assistant chair to the head coach chair. Assistant chair, you're just supporting whatever decision he or she makes. And if it goes wrong, well, that's their fault. I didn't choose that. And then when it's your job, though, I don't know. I felt that responsibility, not pressure like in a fear or negative way, but just the heavy responsibility of every decision, every choice that we make, plays, offensive, defensive schemes, personnel. Yeah, it really affects the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, I think it took me a year or two as a head coach to figure out, at the end of the game, at the end of the season, it's did you win, did you lose? That's it. There is no but. There is no justification for losing or any excuse for losing. When you're the head coach, it's simply all of these decisions that you made. Did it lead to a positive or did it lead to a negative? Did you win or did you lose? And having that responsibility and that burden on you, without being able to give an explanation or without using it as an excuse. I mean, that's something that to me as a head coach, it took me a year or two to learn that at the end of the day, it's did you win, did you lose, and that's it. There is no more next sentence.
And perspective is the word, right? We want our players to never think that like they're never as great as they think they are. They're never as bad as they think they are. I think that's really important for coaches to remember too, because I know you're probably the same way, even though you've had a lot more success, wins and losses and state tournament success than maybe I ever will. But I think coaches struggle with perspective because where things are going really well and we're winning, we may turn a blind eye to some of the mistakes and some of the areas that we still need to improve. And then when we're losing, we may think that the whole thing's going down. So there is a lot of we want our players to be mentally tough, process based, think about what's next in front of them, have a short-term memory. But we have to have that as well.
The Jamodi podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. One of the questions that you sent me on the list was how do you handle defeat? And when I was thinking about that, I think it's very, very important for us to lead by example. And if you make rash decisions after a defeat, if you come in the locker room and say a bunch of things that you regret the next day, or if you start making a bunch of decisions in the heat of the moment, we're not, if I was doing that as a coach, I'm not giving my team the example of which I want them to play like. You have to be able to play through mistakes if you want to be a championship level team. And you have to be even keel, like you referenced. One of the big things that to me stood out from the big run that Tech made to the national championship game several years ago was Chris Beard used the term stone face. Basically referencing no matter if we're doing great or things aren't going our way, we need to stay even keel. We need to have that look on our face like we're just going to the next play. We're just here to take care of business. And I think that really hit home with me in how we want our teams to play. Because if you get too high when you're doing well or you get too low when you're not doing as well, it's difficult for you to make the next play at the level that you want to make it at. And so that's one of the things that we've really tried to implement over the years. And I think that's important for me to lead by example on that. Don't get too outrageously high when things are going good. And absolutely when we're not doing well, that's when they need you the most. And so just staying even keel and staying stone faced in those situations and after a tough loss, or after a tough injury to one of your best players, or whatever negative example you want to put in there, your team's going to feed off of that. And ultimately, your program's going to feed off that for years to come.
And I think, too, the consistency from how you are in practice to how you are in games is really important with that. Because if you're not stone-faced in practice, if you're losing your cool on every mistake or every mishap that happens, but then in a game, you're trying to or asking your players to, or do you allow them to have negative emotions in practice? I would imagine that leads to inconsistency with that when you play, correct?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think that's dead on. One of the biggest things that we talk to our seventh graders about when they come into our program is body language is the most important thing. We talk to them about that on day one. The second thing that we talk to them about is you're not going to talk to an official. You're not going to bad body language official. You're not going to eye roll an official. You're not going to look in the stands at your mom and dad during a game. All these things lead to the way that we want to play as a program and what we want to be about as a program. And it goes all the way into how do you react to a mistake? Because basketball is such an imperfect game.
Yeah.
The best players in the world make 50% of their shots. And so, we're always talking to them about there are going to be negative things that happen and how we want them to handle those things. And I feel like, especially this day and age in the social media age, If you don't get out front of those things early when you get them in your program, then you're going to be playing behind the eight ball the entire time that those kids are in your program. And so we try to set that standard and that expectation from day one. This is how your body language is going to be. This is how we're going to react to mistakes. And then as the head coach, it's important that you lead by example and make sure that you're showing them the way in those things that you expect them to do.
Yeah, some people might have had parents that it was the idea of do as I say, not as I do. And I know I had coaches like that over the years. And that's really hard for players to follow that level of hypocrisy from what you're telling us to do to what we see you doing. And when you said to the seventh graders about handling officials well and responding to them well, I don't know. I'm guessing there's a lot of coaches on there that really kind of put their heads down, because if we're trying to be that example, think back to those moments in games where we're not mirroring that at all. We're losing our cool, but yet we're expecting these 17-year-olds, teenagers to do better than us. So I don't know. Do you have any advice on trying to be better with officials so that our players know exactly what it should look like?
Yeah, I think we all struggle with this because the calls that are being made during the middle of the game are directly, a lot of times, if it's a close game, have a direct impact on the end result of the game.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing that I've done over the years is I have conversations with myself before big games on how I'm going to handle those negative situations. You have that internal voice in your head that is saying, okay, when this call goes against us, not only is your team going to be watching you, but everybody in the stands is going to be watching you. The whole home crowd, if it's a big game, we're fortunate where, we play in the playoffs, we have a big following. And the crowd is also going to see the way that you're reacting as a coach. Obviously, the most important part is your players, but also the players' parents are sitting in the stands. Also, the whole community is sitting in the stands. And to me, the thing that we've had the most success with is, if you want to play through mistakes, playing through mistakes is also not only your mistakes, but also the mistakes of the officials. And if our expectation is to be stone-faced when we play through our own mistakes, we also have to be stone-faced to play through officials' mistakes. And no matter what, at the end of the day, like I referenced a while ago, if the referee blows 18 calls or if the referee blows 2 calls, it's all about figuring out a way to win the game. And it doesn't matter. Sometimes they're going to be better than others. But just being able to be even keeled through those moments, way easier said than done.
Yeah.
I have conversations with myself before the game on how specifically I'm going to handle those situations, not only what I verbalize, but also what my body language says.
Man, I appreciate you sharing that. I think that's powerful to think about and a great reminder for coaches, not only with officials, but also with our players. The reactions that we have, we want them to play with a next play mentality, have that selective amnesia. Like at our school, it's shoot to get hot, shoot to stay hot, which means I need my guys moving past 0 for 1, 0 for 2, 0 for 3, continuing to shoot the right ones. But then I've got to be careful, and I've caught myself on film. And coaches, maybe a great exercise is pick a random game from last year, go on and not watch this, but watch what you're doing on that sideline with your body language. And coach, they would shoot a great shot and miss it. I would go sit down on misses. And it was almost like I could right on the money see it. And I didn't even realize I was doing that, but I was showing a negative reaction to our guys taking the right shot, doing exactly what I'm asking to do, but they just miss it. What I should have been doing is standing up, clapping, telling them that's the right one, next one, hyping them up, encouraging them, instead of going and sitting down. Like, what does that even show? It's exactly opposite of what I'm telling them. So you're right on the money, coach. That body language is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you just referenced is exactly what I did. I actually ran into it on accident. I was watching our team on film after the year, and I started kind of noticing me and my body language. And I'm like, that's not the representation that I need to be giving. And so that was part of my development as a coach. And none of us are perfect. I'm not going to sit here and say that there's still not moments that I say something to a referee or that I have bad body language that I regret later. And hey, every now and then you do need to say something to the officials. You do need to bark at them a little bit just to make sure that they know you're there.
But
And
planned out, like you said, strategic, not just losing your
absolutely,
cool. Yeah.
absolutely, yes, sir.
You're at a smaller school, and you've been one question I've got to ask is about being at the boys level for a long time, having a state championship, going to 4 state tournaments with on the boys side. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And then moving to the girls side, what was the reason for the change?
I think we all get to a point when we coach at a school our level, you start realizing that you're going to have to share kids throughout the year. We're at a big football school, and it was a great dynamic. I played everything in high school, played football, basketball, baseball, and so I kind of understood what it was like as a player, having to move from sport to sport. I coached football for 7 years here. And
Wow.
so I was a big part of the football program as well. But being able to balance home life and being able to balance, me and my wife wanted to have kids. I went back to school to get my admin stuff, and I knew I wasn't going to have time to do that if I continued to burn the candle at both ends, basically working 350 days a year,
Yeah.
as I was doing as the boys coach here. And if you would have told me, 12 years ago that I would have ever been coaching girls, especially here, I would have said you were crazy. One of my mentors, Coach Wayne Johnson, was here. He was towards the end of his career. He decided he was going to step out of it. And he came to me and he said, I really think you should look at this girls' job. There was some talent coming up, and he knew that it was going to be a good job. And really, I went home and talked to my wife about it, leap of faith. Coach Johnson talked me into it, and it was the best decision I ever made, for a lot of different reasons. Not just because we've been able to have success, but I have been able to be at home more. I was able to go back and get my admin stuff and get into upper level admin. But to be honest with you, I've enjoyed learning. The girls don't get out in the yard and play as much as boys do. Specifically, they don't go to the city park and play as much. And I think that's changing some. But there's more detailed things, in my opinion, that I have to cover as a head girls basketball coach here in order to develop players than I did on the boys side here. And so learning those things has been something that I didn't know that I was going to have to learn. But that has been a very enlightening part of the job. And then being around girls, and they're different. They're policers. A lot of times, you have to build confidence in girls, whereas my experience with boys is every single boy thinks that exactly, they think they're a D1 player. They think you should throw the ball to them and everybody should get out of the way. And when you have guys like that, how are you supposed to pick which one to throw the ball?
Yeah.
So anyways, those are some, differences over the years that I've experienced. But Idalou has been good to me, and I've had a lot of opportunities to be around a lot of good players, and been around a strong admin team here that's always had our back. And so my days here have definitely been good to me.
Managing 2 sport athletes as a coach it is challenging. I think some guys do it better than others. I think I'm finally at a place now where my football players feel good about doing that. They don't feel like they're letting me down, because they're not. But maybe I think it's really easy, without even realizing it, we can say things or do things, or our facial expressions, body language, our choices we make almost make them feel like they're doing something wrong by playing multiple sports. So with your experience, especially as a football coach on the boys side, but then golly, with girls and volleyball, it's still there. How do you handle multiple sport athletes?
For me personally, the best thing was the fact that I referenced a while ago. I played everything. I'm from a small school myself, and so I understand it from an athlete point of view first and foremost. And then coming to Idalou, I got here 16 years ago. I came as the boys' assistant. It was obvious to us, football is king in Texas, but it was also going to be king here. And so there was never going to be, when I took over as a head boys basketball coach here, the football coach was never going to feel like we were trying to make basketball number one. My biggest goal as the boys basketball coach when I took over 15 years ago as a head coach was to take what they had been doing in football and take that culture and take that winning and take all the things that they had been doing good in football and implement that in basketball. And so we felt like it was a sleeping giant in basketball here because of the foundation had already been laid in another sport. And so we
Yeah.
were able to piggyback off that success. And then I think just being genuine with the kids. When you tell them, we want you to play those other sports, when it's time for you to come to our sport, we're going to do the best we can, and we're going to bust it, and we're going to figure out how to maximize who we are. The dynamic in coaching boys and coaching girls at our level is different. When you talk about when you have to get your work done. So as the boys basketball coach at a 3A school, in my opinion, at a football school, you have to get all your work done in the summer. You got to play 40, 50 games in the summer.
Wow,
Now
yeah.
the skill development that the UIL has allowed us to do over the last 3 or 4 years, it has changed that a little bit, where you do have access to them, as far as individually in the summer. But when I was the boys basketball coach here, we were playing 40 or 50 games every summer. We were going to 3 or 4 team camps. We were having open gym 2 or 3 nights a week. That month and a half in the summer is when we were getting all of our work done, because I knew come August 1st, we weren't going to see them until most of the time, the mid-December. We had a very special group in 2010, 2011. We actually did not start basketball until December 20th.
Wow.
We played the state championship football game on Saturday night in Mansfield, and then we had our first district game on Tuesday. And so that, you have to get all your work done in the summer, because
Yeah.
you're definitely not going to have any prep time during the year. As the girls coach here, we still get our kids in the fall, and so they're practicing volleyball outside the athletic period, and then our basketball kids are practicing basketball during the fall, during the athletic period, is our setup right now, and so we don't have to get as much done in the summer as we were having to get done in the summer on the boys' side.
That makes sense. And I love the idea of, you said, being genuine with them. I think if we truly, like, what's our why? If our why is really for them to have a great high school experience, and we care about those kids and they love getting to play, like, let's say football, kid loves football. If I truly care about him, why would I want to take that away from him? Why would I want him to do less than that? And the only reason I can think of that I would want that is my pride and my ego, because I know that he will be the best basketball player he could be if he's spending all this time doing that. But that really is only serving me and maybe the program, but not that individual. And I think that's kind of taken me maybe some time over the years to really figure out what my why is with this, and it has to be more about, I want every player to feel like Stan Bonowitz said, you got to gas out. Every high school player gasses out at the end of their career, at their high school career, meaning they have no regrets. They did everything all out that they felt they wanted to or could do. But Coach, that's hard.
Absolutely, it's hard, especially when your name's on the top line and you feel like it. If a kid plays football, they got a chance that they're going to get hurt, or at the very least, they're not going to be spending as much time in the gym, and it's going to directly impact you as a head coach. But I feel like it's important for us to realize it shouldn't be us standing in the way of doing something that the kid wants to do. And the other part of that is, specifically in small school Texas, head basketball coaches and athletic directors / head football coaches have had notorious bad relationships through, and not everywhere, but you hear a lot of horror stories about that.
Yeah.
And so, when I was the head basketball coach here on the boys' side, I tried to go out of my way to develop that relationship with the athletic director, and just understand that likely basketball was never going to be the most important thing in a place like this. but that if we could coexist, if there was a way we could coexist and also we could be successful, that was really my main goal. But you want to have a good relationship with your head football coach and athletic director if possible. I know there's places that it's just not possible. I don't want to paint a rosy picture and know that everybody, fair and equal position.
Just make it work out with the guy that really could care less about your sport and how, because there are some places like that, but I think you nailed it though too, is just, I think we got to make an effort. Like as a basketball coach in the state of Texas, maybe Indiana's different, where the effort has to be from other places to the basketball coach. But right, this is where we are, and we've chosen. That's the thing. That's another thing we got to remember. Like, I choose to be here. Many people, they choose to be at the situation where they're at, and with that, we need to make an effort to meet with that football coach, acknowledge the important role, or volleyball, whatever sport that you're dealing with, acknowledge the important role that they play in the school dynamic within the students' lives, your players' lives. And then, making sure that you're bringing that, your why to the table, which is you really want it to be the best experience for your players. I think that's a good nugget from you.
Yeah. And then once you do, if you go and they're being very unreasonable, it's one of those things where you try to fight for your program. And then if you get to the point where you feel like, okay, this is completely unfair and this is ridiculous, then maybe it's time for you to move on. And those are the decisions that we all get to weigh in every different spot that we're in.
Yeah. But I think the big thing you said there is you gave it a shot to fight for your program. If you don't like conflict, right? If you don't want those interactions, I think there's sometimes we get in this position where we're frustrated with so many things, but we're not attempting to fix or change, or not even giving it a shot. I mean, at least do that, like fight for your program. And then ultimately, make your decision of, is this a place where you continue to stay and, for a long time with where you're at and the circumstances, or time to move on. But thankfully, it sounds like you've been in that place where you're happy where you are and you love the environment. I love it here too, even though we're on our third football coach since I've been here. And that's always an interesting thing for the coaches that have gone through that, is you don't know how this guy's going to be coming in. But again, it's about that first impression, letting them know that you're there to support them and you're not there to, hey, you stay over there, I stay over here. You see the difference? Like, don't like, I think it's all about how we present ourselves, like early on in that relationship.
Yeah, for sure. And then my biggest, kind of finishing that out, my biggest thing here was I was a football coach for 7 years, so I'm gonna try to be every bit as good over there as I am. It's my time, and I'm the head basketball coach, and so that was one of the reasons that I felt like I built some trust with the head football coaches, is I did everything I could to be the best football coach I could be during that season.
Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Ballogy. Manage and measure your players' skill development and increase accountability year-round utilizing the Ballogy app. Boost inter-squad competition with drills backed by the National High School Basketball Coaches Association, including a 40-shot Ballogy skills assessment. Please visit ballogy.com/teams for information on how you can provide this resource for your team. Coach, the speed round. As the TABC president, everybody feels like they know who you are, but after the speed round, we're really going to know. You ready?
I'm ready.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
Vanilla.
Toppings or just straight vanilla?
No, just straight vanilla. I'm a plain guy.
Greatest shooter of all time?
Oh, Steph Curry.
No question. And with some of these, I mean, we can go on the girls' side if you'd like, or I think some of my questions I automatically go guys' side. But have you been? Let me ask you this: as a girls' coach, have you been learning more about the girls' game, in the WNBA and the college game, so that you can kind of talk with your players, about the girls maybe they're watching?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question because, I was so used to it, obviously, as a male player and then coaching males for 7 or 8 years. I was so used to motivating them from the lens of a male athlete, and then figuring out different ways to show clips. You don't want to always show, guy players to female athletes. And so I've definitely dived into and getting more educated about what the female game looks like, and you know, who the best college players are, who the best WNBA players are. And there's a ton of good female shooters out there right now. Obviously, the kid at Iowa is unbelievable.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a couple in the WNBA right now too that are good. Yeah, I can't see her.
Yeah.
You know, if you were going to ask my son, he would say Larry Bird. He's the best shooter of all time. I got him on the old time YouTube clips right now. So
You've been raising him right, man. The fact that somebody in the 2023s at that age would go Larry Bird, good for you.
Oh yeah, he knows that Bird was the best shooter and Bill Laimbeer was the dirtiest player.
Best basketball movie of all time.
Oh man, that's hard. Let's see, what's the one with Shaq and Penny and
Blue Chips?
Blue Chips, yeah, that's probably my favorite one.
That's a good one.
That's a movie before its time too. All the corruption and all that good stuff.
No doubt. Texting or talking?
I would prefer talking, but I feel like I text more now than ever.
There's something about just being able to get your point across real quick. But there does feel to be like, I feel like, is it bad that I don't want to talk to people more, that I could just save time by getting it in? I don't know.
Yeah, we all fall into the trap. And, you know, I look down at my phone and it feels like I've talked to 75 different people that day through text.
Yep. Favorite holiday?
I like Thanksgiving. You know, I like the Thanksgiving holiday. Love the food, and then you know the Cowboys are always playing on Thursday. I have a lot of memories from family when I was young doing that.
Do you take off around holidays with your players, or do you try to get as many practices in right around them as you can?
No, we try to give them off. A couple of years ago, our school started going to giving the whole week of Thanksgiving off. So we get 2 weeks at Christmas and 1 week at Thanksgiving, and we try to make sure that we give them off as much as possible. This year, we're not going to go to a Christmas tournament, so they're going to get a little extra time off.
Nice.
It normally depends on our district schedule as far as our Christmas tournament goes, but we definitely try to give them as much time off as possible.
Up 3 on defense with 7 seconds left. Do you foul or no foul?
Never foul. I don't believe in fouling. We just don't. You know, if I was coaching at a higher level, I might have a different opinion on that.
Yeah, the shot maker ability. Yeah.
Absolutely. And even on the boys' side, every now and then I thought twice about that, because a lot of times you play, especially the deeper you play against better players.
Yeah.
But it's just always been my philosophy. Hey, let's dance with what brought us, and that's hard nose. You know, let's be solid, let's be sound, let's challenge it, and without fouling, and do the best we can do.
What'd you say? Let's dance with what brought us?
Absolutely.
I love that. That's good. What book would you give someone?
Oh man, there's a lot of different books that are on the shelf right now. I like all the John Gordon stuff.
Yeah.
You know, to me, it goes into what we want to be about as a program. And, you know, just always figuring out a way to overcome stuff, even when your backs are against the wall. And I think he does a good job of painting the picture of, you know, life is not going to be perfect, and it's going to get hard, which gives you every bit the more reason to be positive in your response to those negative things that happen.
Name a bucket list item you still need to do.
I want to go overseas. Yeah, I've never been overseas, you know, whether it be Europe or Asia, you know, maybe Ireland, but
nice.
I've never done that. I would like to go overseas.
I like that. Last one. In basketball, who's the GOAT?
Jordan. My son knows that one too. My 7-year-old knows that. He, you know, I've actually had to bring him off the LeBron's no good train. You know, he's into this deal where he watches these YouTube videos and they compare Jordan and LeBron, and you know, Jordan puts him in the dust, and I had to explain to him. I was like, okay, Jordan's better than LeBron, but LeBron's still pretty good, man.
Yeah, he's still, if there's a mountain, his face is still up there, right?
Absolutely.
But
and then from our neck of the woods, you know, I would say 35, 40 miles from here, Cheryl Swoops is from Brownfield. And so, she won a national championship at Tech, and then obviously had a WNBA career and Olympic career. And so as far as our neck of the woods, she definitely is one of the best females of all time.
Nice. Coach, this was so much fun, man. You gave me a little bit over an hour of your time, which I really appreciate. And thank you so much for what you're doing for Texas high school basketball with TABC. and just really enjoyed getting to know you a little bit better, learn more about your coaching philosophy. This was awesome.
Yeah, Coach, I really appreciate you having me, and we love what you're doing with the podcast. Real quick before you go, I should have mentioned this to you when we were corresponding back and forth, but I actually went to point guard college with you way back in the day, and it didn't dawn on me until we started talking that you were at that point guard college. I think it might have been down in San Antonio, if I
Are you
remember right.
serious? Like back when we were in high school?
Yes, I was several years younger than you, but I was
Yeah.
at the point guard college that you were at. I don't remember what year.
That's a small world. So you with Dick DiVenzio, he was running it back then.
He was.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, that's
What was your
wasn't.
experience like when you went?
Oh, I loved it. It was so much. It seemed like it was just the basic principles when you compare it to kind of what it's extended into now, where they have all the different types that you can go to. But it was great for me. It was. I think it's one of the biggest reasons that I kind of started turning to coaching, because to me it was thinking so much more about how to think the game versus how to physically play the game. And so that really started turning me into looking at coaching.
No doubt.
The first experience with that.
I think if you really bought into what Dick was teaching, there's no way that he even called it, you're becoming a student of the game. And I think that's what a lot of great coaches, that the ability to have that growth mindset and always be learning and watching. And so I felt the same way too. I felt like those PGC, I went to 2 of them in high school, maybe 3 in high school, 3 in high school. And yeah, 1 was there. Yeah, that's nuts. And, but I thought that helped me to really play and survive in college, and definitely has helped me throughout my coaching career. If any coaches, PGC is not a sponsor, but I mention them all the time because I directed for them for 5 years, still love their stuff. And if any coach has never been to a session as an observing coach, man, I think that's one of the best things you can do. It's a clinic in itself for 5 days to just go observe a session, and all those dudes that are running it now are great.
Yeah, absolutely. I love my experience with it. And like I said, it started making me think about the game differently, and really started turning me on to coaching, and which obviously we're both doing that for our career. So it had a huge impact on us.
Just before we get off, why don't you say a little bit about TABC, any high school coaches that are on here that aren't plugged in, not involved yet, what they need to do, and just, I guess, how important that is.
Yeah, the biggest thing with TABC is membership is important. And the question that is always asked is what does the membership do for me? I think you alluded to a lot of it at the beginning, but getting honest for your kids is the number one biggest thing. Attending clinic, and then there's several other small things that TABC has tried to do lately. They have virtual mini clinics that Vicki Benson from Westlake has been running. There's a lot of good stuff on that. Moving forward, I feel like there's a lot of movement, a lot of positive movement that the last few presidents have helped start building, and then obviously I'm going to continue to try to build towards some of these hot topic issues, specifically right now the shot clock, and then hopefully moving forward, looking at the possibility of split divisions for basketball, and so being a part of the membership and growing the organization as far as being involved, trying to reach out to your board members and knowing the hot topic issues and giving your opinion on those things is always something that is important from the membership.
And Coach, thanks for all that you're doing. I hope you the best of luck this season, and thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely, Coach. Best of luck to you this year as well. Thanks for having us on.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the Jamodi Podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.